We can talk about the vote counting in a minute, but more broadly, I mean, you've spent an awful lot of money trying to advocate for sweeping policy change, especially in energy, for example. And I wonder what you make of the narrative that the market, at least, and the voters have repudiated it, at least at the extreme.
Well, let's start with the market. The market has actually moved really strongly to accepting the move to clean energy. And that goes broadly. I mean, it starts with the big banks, with JP Morgan saying that they're going to lend according to the Paris Accords. It moves to the valuations of clean energy companies like NextEra being bigger than the valuation of ExxonMobil. We're seeing an actually huge move in the market in terms of the cost per kilowatt hour of clean energy versus fossil fuel energy. We're seeing fossil fuel loans going bad at a shocking rate on the balance sheets of big banks. So actually, from a market standpoint, we're seeing the economics swing radically and hard in favor of clean energy. And let's be clear.
So
we don't know what's happening in the politics of the United States yet because we haven't counted every vote. So I think there's a very
But would you argue then that investors
Excuse me?
Would you argue that investors are running ahead of at least the small likelihood at this point that there's a broad mandate within the Senate to do progressive agendas?
Well, I think we've got to start with the presidency, and we have to count every vote. And I believe that the Biden-Harris ticket has a strong path to 270. So let's count the votes before we decide what happened. And by the way, that's what Democrats and Joe Biden are saying let's let the democracy speak. Let's let every American vote be counted. But the market has moved. I'm sorry. We have seen economically what the future is because people who are putting their money up, people who are running big economic institutions have moved. So in fact, from the standpoint, American technology and ingenuity and research has moved way better than anybody would have predicted a year ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago. So this move is happening in the markets. And the question is, are we going to get behind it politically?
Tom, we've also seen tech stocks move dramatically higher this morning. And in particular, I want to point to Uber and Lyft, those stocks benefiting from the passage of Proposition 22 here in California. We were just talking about that with our prior guest. And I want to get your take on that because a year ago, you said there needed to be better regulation of tech giants such as Uber. What do you think of people coming out and voting and saying they don't want to regulate those companies and force them to classify their employees or their workers as employees, rather? Where does that leave that issue for those very influential tech companies in the rest of the nation?
Look, I think it's clear that the way that work is organized is changing. And what I was saying a year ago is exactly what I'm saying now, which is workers need to be protected. The reason that we've put in laws over the years to protect workers is to make sure that they aren't taken advantage of, particularly in times like today of high unemployment. I thought that that was an overreach by those companies. I opposed Prop 22, and I believe that working people, and you can see it in the great income disparities that have grown up over the last 40 years in the United States, need to be protected and organized. And I haven't backed off on that in the least. I think that was a very confusing proposition, but I think it looks as if it will pass. And so we're going to have to figure out going forward how to make sure that working men and women across this country are protected and get to share fairly in the, success of the United States, the prosperity of the United States.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.